This video is going to be more of just like a thoughts on rather than a full-on in-depth review, because I feel like In This Corner of the World doesn't really need to be dug into particularly, and that's not an insult by any means. That's just the type of film that it is. The story is the story of Suzu, a girl that grows up in Hiroshima in the 1930s, and how she kind of struggles with the Second World War, and I think it's one of the best portrayals of civilian life on screen that I've seen. I think it manages this because it focuses on two things in particular, the culture and its characters. And by culture I mean like the intricate little details of the film. So for example, the locations, pre-war Hiroshima just feels, it doesn't feel like a backdrop, it feels like a lived-in city. And it makes all the more sense when you look into the details that the production staff went into, such as, you know, interviewing people that used to know it from their childhood, or aerial photography and things like that, and it does just feel like a place that really existed. And there's always just something, whether it be in the background or the foreground, that just adds a bit more context to everything, whether it be the fashion, the technology, farming techniques, recipes, and ultimately, you know, as it factors in more into the film, it's about how all these things change with the war. And like I said, it just adds so much more cultural context to everything, which just, again, gets you more involved in the world and the film. And I think the crucial part of that is that also weaves into the characters. So when I say something's happening in the foreground or the background, most of the time that is with the characters that you're watching. So it's not a fast-paced film by any means, but the characters are always doing something, they're always moving, and there's always there's a momentum of life throughout every single shot of the film, and it just, again, it feels like it grounds it in reality, whereas this film could have very easily gone into a rose-tinted version of the past. Of course, it helps that the characters are portrayed brilliantly, whether it be through the direction, the writing, or the superb voice acting. The characters just feel, I'm saying this word a lot in it, but it feels very alive, and they feel very real people. And you can tell their characters not just through, you know, what they say, but also just how they act. And you grow attached to all of these characters just because they are so well developed that they just again, they feel real. Yeah, and on top of all the portrayal stuff, the thing that really stuck with me with this film, which I didn't expect, was just how funny it was. There's so many moments of human comedy in this, you know, whether it be Suzu's drawings, or her absent-mindedness, or more often just odd lines that the characters say to each other. And despite there being much more shocking or gripping moments later on in the film, when I'm thinking back to the moments that I remember most of this film, it's always the little comedy moments that have stuck with me more. But with that being said, you know, it is a sad film, it is a film about war, but I never felt like it ever stepped into the realms of deliberately tear-jerking. I don't think that this film does not belong on any lists that, you know, top 10 films to watch if you want to cry. I think that if you are going into this film with the purpose of feeling sad, I think that you're just ultimately missing something out on a lot of what this film has to offer, because it's not just a sob story. One thing that I particularly liked with that was actually the stylistic changes throughout the film. The idea behind it being that Suzu loves to draw, her character loves to draw, and so occasionally you will see the world as if it is one of her drawings, or how she sees the world. I was skeptical at first, but I think it really did well to change it from just being a representation of war to Suzu's unique perspective on war. And every single time that they used it very well, and I think that it actually helped to elevate some of the later dramatic moments of the film. One thing that I will say I think didn't help with these emotional moments is that I did occasionally find the pacing to be a bit off-putting. It made a lot of sense when at the end I realised that it was based on a manga, because the film can essentially be broken down into a series of vignettes that sometimes bleed into one another or sometimes cut abruptly, and because of this, it's sometimes the progression of time is a bit unclear. And because of the way that they transition in between some of these vignettes, I think that it made some of the jumps into darker moments in the latter half a bit more jarring than they should have been. There's one moment in the third act where I think it does work very well, because it's The harsh cuts almost seem like a hard slap of reality, which I think works very well for that moment. However, there was another moment after that where it felt like it was just included because it was very dark, because it was very shocking. It didn't really add anything to the characters, and it was so close to the end that it felt very tacked on. And people may not agree with that because it is a very shocking image in itself, but I think it could have been incorporated into the ending better, and I think that if it was restructured a tiny bit, I think it could have been given even more impact. But overall, that's the only very minor points that I have with this film, and overall I came out of the film thinking that I wouldn't have to see it again. I felt like I'd gotten everything out of it, but looking back on it for this review, it's not that I necessarily enjoy it more, but I think if I went back to go and see it again, I think I would have very much the same experience, and so I can see myself coming back and watching this a year or two down the line. Like I said right from the beginning, I think it's one of the best portrayals of civilian life in the war, and I think it's a really good experience to watch.